the largest in the world.
Hey there guys, this is your host Richard with another marvelous video. Littlefinger walked, so Larys could wobble. Okay, that was a bad joke, but people seem to compare Larys with Varys a lot, given the similarities between their names. At least Varys remotely cared for the welfare of the realm. All Lord Strong Clubfoot seems to worry about is strengthening his position at court and releasing himself at the Queen's feet. He's as sly, scheming and manipulative as Lord Peter Baelish. Now that the Targaryen civil war between the Green and the Black faction has come to a full boil, we've finally realized how a crippled creep lurking in the shadows, feeding on everyone's weaknesses, has the king wrapped around his little finger. Larys has done almost everything to solidify his power at court, and most importantly, he got the queen to his side years before King Viserys passed. Much of Queen Alicent's story in season revolves around her efforts to influence the small council to her favor, with her sons King Aegon and Prince Aemond becoming increasingly violent, and her relationship with Criston Cole causing her unnecessary trouble, given that it's a ruthless, stubborn man who's the newly appointed Hand of the King. Alicent clearly needs trusted allies. So, to navigate such challenges, she's always relied heavily on Lord Larys. But now that his scheming nature of whispering his way through the halls of the Red Keep has come to its peak, Larys Strong has successfully manipulated Aegon to become the realm's new master of whisperers. But somehow, it always seems like there's more to Larys than he lets on. So, without wasting another moment, let's discuss all the subtle details of this conniving character and his influence on the Dance of the Dragons. Also, this video will have some spoilers from the source material, and if you wish to avoid that, now is the time to hit pause. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Larys Strong's journey in the House of the Dragon so far. If you haven't figured it out yet, Larys is a cunning and ruthless man who can go to any lengths without any hesitation to further his own agendas. Like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, Larys worms his way into situations, sinking his manipulative claws into people when they least expect it, and ultimately using them to grow his influence. He's popularly known as Clubfoot because of a birth defect that makes him limp and walk with the help of a stick. But somehow this has allowed him to become the ears on the walls of the Red Keep by lurking in the shadows like a creep and completely going unnoticed while collecting dirt on others. Larys often pretends to be friendly and helpful to earn people's trust, like Alicent and her father, but his true goal has always been to create mistrust and division for his own benefit. He's the second son of King Viserys' former hand, Lord Lionel Strong, and the younger brother of Sir Harwin Strong. But now that they're dead, it currently makes Larys the head of House Strong and the Lord of Harrenhal. During the late King Viserys I Targaryen's reign, Larys became his Lord Confessor, and even after King Aegon II Targaryen usurped the throne, Larys remained an influential man at court, eventually worming his way into the king's small council as the master of whisperers. We first see Larys Strong during Prince Aegon's second name day, where he joined his father and brother in King Viserys' hunting party. Because of his club foot, Larys couldn't tag along the hunt, so he sat with the young and heavily pregnant Queen Alicent, who was gossiping with the other noble ladies in the royal tent. I mean, the first look of this guy was him sitting down with the women and listening in on their gossip. So it's really not surprising how he's turned his disadvantage into a scheming ladder to climb up the social status. Anyways, we see Larys again after the whole Daemon and Rhaenyra fiasco at the night market is over. While Alicent stood in the Godswood of the Red Keep, he tells her that Grand Maester Mellos delivered moon tea to Rhaenyra. Now that Otto has been fired from his position as the king's hand, Larys offers to be Alicent's true ally at court. But in reality, he only whispers the sort of information in Alicent's ear that would further strain her relationship with Rhaenyra. After the show takes a 10-year time jump into the lives of the Targaryen family, we see how Alicent and Larys have now become close confidants. When Alicent tells Larys about her father's attempt to resign as Hand of the King, shares her regret over her own father's dismissal from the court, Larys gathers all the prisoners from the black cells, has their tongues cut out, and uses them to start a fire at Harrenhal that kills both his father and brother. He then informed Alicent of how he cleared the way for her, so her father, Otto Hightower, could return back to the Red Keep as the king's hand. While this benefited her stand and helped her regain a strong support system, Alicent was visibly disturbed by Larys' ruthlessness. This is probably the first time she realized how dangerous this man was, given that he sacrificed his entire family just to stay in the Queen's favor. 6 years later, after Alicent and Rhaenyra's children have grown up, Larys is seen to be the Lord Confessor in the Red Keep. When King Viserys Targaryen died, Alicent and Otto rushed the small council to place Alicent's oldest son Aegon on the Iron Throne before Rhaenyra could even find out about her father's death. During the coup in King's Landing, Larys quietly watched as all the prisoners were being taken to the dungeons, so the truth about the king's death couldn't leave the walls of the Red Keep. He then stood by Otto Hightower while he forced all the lords present in King's Landing to swear their obeisance to the new King Aegon second Targaryen in the throne room. All the lords who refused to bend the knee to Aegon were in prison. Later, when Lord Alan Caswell was trying to escape the Red Keep to warn Rhaenyra about the coup, it was Lord Larys who informed the guards to arrest him. After Otto orders Lord Caswell's execution and hangs his body from the Red Keep as a warning for those who refuse to bend the knee to Aegon, he congratulates Larys and mentions how Larys has been spending a lot of time with the Queen. In turn, Larys responds that there's no reason that with time, Otto can't also benefit from it in the end. One night, when Alicent was going back to her chambers after a meeting with Otto, she saw Larys waiting for her inside and instantly felt unsettled. He then goes on to tell her about Mysaria, the White Worm's network of spies within the Red Keep, including her lady-in-waiting Talia, who kept passing the news on the Queen's whereabouts. He also reveals that Otto was using the White Worm's network to his advantage and suggested that they should kill Mysaria to destroy Otto's edge. Now, in exchange, he makes a rather unsettling demand, which leads us to one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the entire show. Larys boldly asks Alicent to bare her feet, and after she complies, he puts his hands inside his pants and begins to jerk off to her feet as she looks away in disgust. Many of you might have thought his sexual preference was a connection to Larys being born with a club foot, but in reality, this was stemmed from a place of wanting a sense of symbolic power over Alicent. It's more than just a man with a club foot being attracted to feet. Larys is a deeply disturbed person with a lot of trauma, so it's about exerting control by inflicting shame. He could make Alicent do something that made her feel as much shame for a certain part of her body as he felt for his. Basically, Larys enjoys causing pain and making people feel incomplete, like when he cuts out tongues or eyes. Of course, he can't physically harm Alicent like that, but he can make her associate a part of her body with trauma, so even after he's gone, she has this sick feeling about it. It's about making her body the scene of a crime, not about a kink for feet. He enjoys that she's uncomfortable and that he can make her do it. Anyways, on the next day, Larys orders his convicts to set Mysaria's safe house on fire. At the beginning of the second season of House of the Dragon, Larys intercepts Dowager Queen Alicent after a Green Council meeting and tells her that he's completed the interrogation of the Red Keep servants, clearly hinting that any spies for others have been executed. He also informed her that he's personally chosen her new ladies-in-waiting, which makes Alicent uneasy, as it meant that Larys now knew of every step she took. Later, Larys was present in the throne room while King Aegon held court for the small folk. He easily picked up the tension between Aegon and Otto, so after the court session ended, Larys caught up with Aegon and began stroking his ego by comparing him to his father and great-grandfather. He then slyly suggested that Aegon might want a more assertive hand than Otto, warning that people might figure out that Otto was manipulating him, just like he did with his pliable father. After the murder of Prince Jaehaerys, Larys interrupts a rushed small council meeting to inform them that one of the prince's killers has been caught at the Gate of the Gods with Jaehaerys' head in a sack. Otto then overruled King Aegon's desire to execute the man immediately and instructed Larys to interrogate him for more information. After Larys imprisoned Blood and laid out his torture tools, the murderer quickly confessed that he and a rat catcher from the Red Keep were hired by Prince Daemon Targaryen to kill Jaehaerys. After the interrogation, Larys watched as King Aegon entered the cell and repeatedly bashed Blood to death with a mace. In the next few days, when King Aegon declared his intention to march to war with Sir Criston Cole, Larys visited the king's chambers and told him there were rumors in King's Landing that his mother and brother were pushing him to leave so they could rule in his absence. Aegon then appoints Larys as his Master of Whisperers, admitting he feels a greater need for one than his late father did. Meanwhile, Larys' seat at Harrenhal was captured by Prince Daemon Targaryen and Caraxes after Larys' great uncle and castellan, Sir Simon Strong, quickly placed his allegiance to Rhaenyra. When Daemon questions Simon's quick decision, Simon makes it clear that he despises Larys, accusing him of being a kinslayer as he was responsible for the deaths of his father and brother. Now, people might still be trying to figure out Larys' true intentions. It's really quite straightforward. All he craves for is power. In the Game of Thrones universe, power is everything, and Larys is clearly no exception. This was evident right from House of the Dragon Season 1, when he arranged the deaths of his father and brother. By doing so, he not only increased his manipulation over the Queen by giving her what she wanted, but it also made him the Lord of Harrenhal. This dual benefit shows how Larys always maneuvers to strengthen his position and gain more control. As Littlefinger once said in Game of Thrones, chaos is a ladder that leads to power, and Larys, like many others in Westeros, is trying to climb this ladder. Rather than through battles, feats of strength, or heroic sacrifices, he's using subterfuge to his benefit. By worming his way into the trust of powerful people, Larys is climbing the ladder with minimal effort on his part, which easily makes him one of the more compelling characters in House of the Dragon, and undoubtedly one who will continue to shape the series' events moving forward. What is the role of Lord Larys in the Dance of Dragons? Now, before we discuss Larys Strong's character arc from Fire and Blood, I'd like again to warn you guys about all the spoilers that's coming your way. So, if you don't wish to know about what happens at the end, this is your chance to hit pause. Okay, in the books, after Prince Jaehaerys was murdered and Daemon Targaryen took Harrenhal for the Blacks, Lord Larys drew up all the lists of houses that the King's new hand, Sir Criston Cole, could march against and make them bend the knee for Aegon. When King's Landing fell to Rhaenyra, Larys somehow managed to escape before getting captured. Not just that, that, he also secretly led the injured King Aegon and his two remaining children, Prince Maelor and Prince Jaehaera, out of the Red Keep through a hidden passage so they could avoid the city's gates. It was Larys who insisted that they should split up and ordered Sir Rickard Thorne of Aegon's Kingsguard to take Prince Maelor to Lord Lionel Hightower in Old Town, where Sir Willis Fell escorted Princess Jaehaera to Lord Boros Baratheon at Storm's End. Larys then disguised King Aegon as a commoner and sent him to Dragonstone with Sir Marston Waters, hoping that it would be the last place that Rhaenyra would search for her half-brother. Meanwhile, during his campaign in the Riverlands, Prince Aemon Targaryen believed that it was Larys who would help Rhaenyra take the capital. So, in retaliation, Aemon had every member of House Strong at Harrenhal killed, except for Alys Rivers, who he kept as a spoil of war. Larys actually stayed back in King's Landing and quietly worked behind the scenes to weaken Rhaenyra's grip on the capital. After Queen Helena Targaryen tragically committed suicide, it was Larys who spread the rumors that she was murdered by Queen Rhaenyra's orders. This rumor sparked a chaotic riot in King's Landing, leading Rhaenyra to ultimately flee the city. It was Sir Perkin the Flea and his supporters who took over the Red Keep, proclaiming Trystane Truefire as the king during the Moon of the Three Kings. Even here, Larys seized the opportunity to boldly enter the Red Keep, where he was warmly welcomed by Perkin and given a prominent position beside Trystane. To further his manipulations, Larys pretended to support the pretender Trystane and arranged for Alicent, Grand Maester Orwyle, and Lord Corlys Velaryon to be released from the black cells of the keep. Later, when Lord Boros Baratheon's forces approached King's Landing, it was Larys who offered to negotiate on behalf of Trystane with Boros. But of course, Trystane was a fool. He had no idea that Larys was conspiring with Perkin and the Green faction to betray him and hand over the city to supporters of King Aegon II. In exchange for the help in restoring King Aegon II to power, Larys promised Perkin and his followers full pardon. However, this offer didn't extend to Trystane, who was later executed. Larys also agreed to his betrothal with one of Boros's daughters, Loras Baratheon. After the entire fiasco was over, Alicent suggested that Corlys Velaryon should be executed for supporting Rhaenyra's claim to the Iron Throne. But Larys calmed her down after pointing out that her son, King Aegon, was currently in Dragonstone, surrounded by Velaryon ships. He advised Alicent to pardon Corlys for now and wait until the war was over before dealing with him quietly. Soon, King Aegon II returned back to King's Landing and fed Rhaenyra to his dragon, Sunfire, in front of her son. Later, during a council meeting following King Aegon's return, things began heating up when Sir Tywin Lannister proposed that Rhaenyra's only surviving son, Prince Aegon the Younger, who was held captive by Aegon II's supporters, should be executed. It was Corlys Velaryon who vehemently opposed this suggestion, which irked the king into punishing him. But Lord Larys Strong intervened, advising Aegon II against punishing Corlys, knowing it could turn Corlys' son, Aelin Velaryon, against them. After the meeting, Larys discreetly warned Corlys about the ongoing plot for the small council to eventually kill him, and then convinced Corlys to join forces in a plan of his own making. When Lord Boros and his army were defeated at the Battle of the King's Road, King Aegon II refused Lord Velaryon's suggestion to surrender. Meanwhile, Larys secretly arranged for Princess Baela Targaryen to be taken away to prevent her from being used as a hostage against Corlys. Shortly afterward, King Aegon II was found poisoned, with blood oozing out of his mouth. Larys and Corlys then planned a coup by swiftly dealing with the remaining loyalists, either by imprisoning or killing them. They eventually convinced the remaining supporters to surrender as the opposition forces closed in on the capital. Following this, Aegon II was succeeded by Aegon the Younger, who later went on to marry Princess Jaehaera. When the River Lords arrived in King's Landing, they were all warmly welcomed by the small folk, which was probably a reception organized by Larys. The end of the Master of Whisperers in the Hour of the Wolf. So, the fate of Lord Strong and his allies turned dark when Lord Cregan Stark's Northern Army arrived at King's Landing to clean up the mess that the bloody civil war had left behind. By serving as the hand of the king to the new King Aegon III Targaryen during the Hour of the Wolf, Cregan Stark played an Uno reverse right at Lord Larys Strong's face. Even if he had supported Rhaenyra and the Blacks during the dance, Cregan was staunchly against the murder of Aegon II. He believed that the right death for a king was in the battlefield, not through poison. When Grand Maester Orwyle admitted that he provided Larys with the poison that killed Aegon, and Sir Perkin confessed that he'd been a party in the Clubfoot schemes all along, it was Lord Corlys who confessed how they all plotted against Aegon for the sake of the realm. Meanwhile, Larys remained silent in response to all of Cregan's accusations. When Lord Stark condemned the Clubfoot and the Sea Snake for treason and regicide, Alysanne Blackwood persuaded him to spare Lord Velaryon in exchange for agreeing to marry him. After being found guilty, most of the men who were convicted followed Perkin by joining the Night's Watch. However, Lord Larys and Sir Giles of the Kingsguard opted for death rather than being exiled to the wall. Before ending the Hour of the Wolf, which is the term used for Cregan Stark's 6-day short rule as the King's Hand, the Lord of Winterfell executed Larys and Giles with his Valyrian steel, greatsword, ice. He also granted Larys his final wish by removing his club foot from his body so that Larys could be free of it in death. After their execution, the heads of Larys and Giles were displayed on pikes near the Red Keep gates. Larys's body was entrusted to the Silent Sisters, and eventually his bones were laid to rest at his ancestral seat in Harrenhal. While Cregan Stark had ordered Larys's severed foot to be buried in a field, it mysteriously vanished before it could be interred. And with Larys being the last of his line, his death marked the total extinction of House Strong. Is it really possible for Larys Strong to be a warg or a Greenseer? As I've mentioned a gazillion times before, Larys Strong's nature is pretty much like Littlefinger, and let's just be honest, these shows run so hard only because of such notorious schemers. As Tyrion Lannister once pointed out in Game of Thrones, that he couldn't fight with strength, but he could fight with his mind. Larys seems to have embraced the same idea. He becomes the person who's creepily lurking in the shadows and slowly sowing the seeds of conflict between Alicent Hightower and Rhaenyra Targaryen. Now, in the Game of Thrones books, both Arya and Bran could warg into animals. However, the show focused solely on Bran the Broken for this ability, which seemed to manifest only after Jaime Lannister crippled him by pushing out of a tower in Winterfell. And considering Larys Strong's deep knowledge about everything that's going on within King's Landing, some believe he might have the same abilities as Bran Stark. After all, he's quite similarly physically disabled in the story. In case you didn't know, Greenseer is actually quite a broad term for various magical abilities. In the books, Greenseers can see through the faces of their weirwood trees, or influence animals and plants to do their bidding while also being able to have a glimpse into the past and future. A popular fan theory has been making the round since 2022, and it's about how Larys Strong might also be a Greenseer. There have been many hints dropped throughout House of the Dragon, such as his knowledge of Alicent and Rhaenyra's conversation near the weirwood tree, which has started this speculation. Now, the theory about Larys Strong being a warg or a Greenseer intensified during Rhaenyra's troubled wedding with Laenor Velaryon. After Criston Cole brutally murdered Laenor's boyfriend Joffrey, the ceremony continued in private, and toward the end of the episode, we see a rat lapping up Joffrey's blood. This could have been a metaphor for how death draws out predators. However, after the show's 10-year time jump, we also witnessed Larys Strong's transition into a full-blown villain by killing his family to become the Lord of Harrenhal and head of House Strong. The theory about him possibly being a warg gained more attention during the rat scene with King Viserys in Season 1, where the king is seen weeping alone and a rat appears, walking along a ledge within plain view. Now, of course, we don't know if Larys can warg into rats and use them to spy throughout the Red Keep, because the source material has left this part in a rather grey area. Although it is worth noting that Larys Strong's family lineage traces back to the first men, who revered and worshipped the weirwood trees. His birthplace is Harrenhal, which is situated near the Isle of Faces, a place that's known for its abundance of weirwood trees. Apart from that, many have observed that these rats have always made an appearance during the most important moments in the show. Since Greenseers can warg into animals, perhaps Larys is using this ability to control the rats and gather information. There's also another bizarre theory that believes Larys to be one of the Green Men, with his ultimate goal being to break Targaryen dominance in Westeros. Before the Andals arrived, the Green Men ruled Westeros from the God's Eye, using their Greenseer abilities and the religion of the old gods to wield all the power and authority in the realm. Now, the Andals disrupted this by replacing the faith of the old gods with that of the Seven. Despite this, the Green Men continue to operate, as evidenced by their appearance at the tourney at Harrenhal. Given that Bloodraven was also a Greenseer who lived beyond his natural lifespan, as he was 125 years old when he first met Bran, it's clear that the Green Men have remained politically active and continued recruiting up until at least 281 AC. It's also likely for them to be still active, considering Bran's involvement with them. Basically, these Greenseers have always aimed to be the general stewardship of the realm under their influence. Game of Thrones ends with a three-eyed raven or Bloodraven's successor on the Iron Throne, so given their ability to see the future, it's really not unreasonable to think this has always been their ultimate goal. Plus, Larys Strong was born and brought up in Harrenhal, which is a place closely linked to magic and the God's Eye. Even his rumoured half-sister, Alice Rivers, is apparently a witch who can see the future. Both of them rise to become major game changers in the Dance of the Dragons, so it's entirely possible that Larys could be a Greenseer and a member of the Green Men. Maybe he was actively working to fuel the conflict between the Targaryen factions to bring about their downfall. And let's not forget that Howland Reed's visit to the Green Men led to his unexpected arrival at the tourney at Harrenhal. It was his presence that indirectly triggered Robert's rebellion around the theories about Rhaegar and Lyanna's meeting being true. So when you're dealing with a faction that can see the future, nothing should be treated as a coincidence. I personally believe that Larys could be a Greenseer. It could be possible that while he was growing up at Harrenhal, the Green Men communicated with him, and Larys was just carrying out their will, whether that involved weakening the Targaryens to support the Green Magic faction or setting up events that would shape the future, ultimately leading to the events of A Song of Ice and Fire 172 years later. Larys seems to know everything in the show. He's the guy with all the secrets. And because he knows it all, the theory about him being a Greenseer might actually have some weight to it. Maybe he is using the rats to spy, although we haven't seen any rats since the Blood and Cheese incident. As Fire and Blood is written like a history book, we can never know for sure. At this point, all we can do is wait for the show to shape his role as the conniving clubfoot who knew it all. Plus, House of the Dragon is diving into the magical aspects of Westeros more deeply, so in case the showrunners draw up a connection with Larys being a warg or a Greenseer, it'll surely be an interesting thing to watch. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.